realized is the open source community itself is very close to developers and inherently a bit away from security, right? Their focus is to develop something, solve some problem, and give it to community where they can have contributions, right? So it becomes more important that you have a team which understands the risk around open source. They have regular patch management happening around it, because we never know if there's a security issue, it has to be fixed in time or not. Commercial tools we can expect, because we are paying somebody, we can expect that the fixes will be coming soon, the patches will be released soon. And since commercial tools have proprietary code, nobody is able to get hold of the code and find more issues, which open source is more prone to, right? So I think we have done a lot of good things, open source community, because many startups which don't have money to have security team in place or buy commercial tools, we have done a lot of good things in making them cost efficient. But then after a while they realize that we still need to manage it well. So I think rest of the points are covered very closely.
Well, everything has pros and cons, right? So if you are using OSS, then we'll have to be prepared with the pros and as well as the cons of those tools. Okay. My next question to Prajal. As a CISO responsible for product security in a fintech firm, striking a balance between innovation, usability, and robust security measures is paramount, right? So how do you approach ensuring that the security is integrated throughout the product software development lifecycle and without compromising the innovation and usability?
Sure. So I don't want to speak specifically about fintech. I think it's relevant for everyone who is dealing with security in their org. Again, I believe striking the right balance is a combination of people, process, and tech for me. In all these three aspects, there are different ways you can approach this problem. Like for people, I don't believe in hiring in bulk and solving security problems there. You build an efficient team who understands the entire business requirements, and then they tailor the security with respect to that, right? It can be a very efficient small team, or it can be a bulky team and you can overboard it. I feel there is always a balance there as well, where you can figure. Again, with processes, in my previous org, we used to have something called as idiot proofing some of our things, where in a gist we used to say, if you build a process, make sure there is no bypass to it. Even there is a bypass of any which way, there is a way to reactively figure out how it happened. Given an example, say a developer makes a rookie mistake of opening up a VM to the internet. Such a flaw, right? Massive backlash can happen in matter of minutes. So how do you entirely bulletproof that? Your process has to be strict enough to take care of even such rookie mistakes. So if you have a strong, stringent process to take care of it, and some reactive measures also to figure out how the bypass works, that is a brilliant thing. And then later the technology bit. Go heavy on the automation side of things, try and see all the mundane tasks could be easily automated, leverage a lot of AI if possible to take out like the false positives and make it as robust as possible. I feel these are the three ways we can make it as efficient as possible. Sometimes usability and innovation, most of the startups, they try to go overboard with velocity of shipment. And security is always an afterthought. But if you mix all of this with the right balance of people, process, tech, I feel we can achieve that.
Would you like to add something, Bilal?
Sure. I think it's not like a question of if and or. Like it's basically like you want to blend innovation with agility, right? So what that means is basically like you analyze what your business requirements are, and you see what the product strategy looks like, right? So when you know exactly what your product strategy is like, right? So you align your business, security requirements according to that. So when you have clear visibility on your basically like go-to-market strategy, your product line strategy, right? So what happens is that your security does not become a separate initiative. So it becomes part of setting the pace and setting the basically the tone at the top to make sure that it becomes part of your business strategy.
Thank you so much for this insightful thoughts. So I'll have more 2 to 3 questions to the panel, and then we're gonna take audience questions. So get ready with your questions. Next question to Hilal and Neelu. Zero trust architecture it's about. So it's gaining traction in today's cybersecurity era. So how can product developers effectively implement zero trust principles to enhance the product security posture of their offerings? And what are the practical challenges they might face during their development process or
First of all, we have to understand, okay, why zero trust access or zero trust, why did it come into existence, right? So it came into existence because our access actually got extended, right? So earlier we had basically the remote access that we do through VPNs or on-premise access that we did through our own workstations, right? So there was a clear visibility on who is accessing what and where they're accessing it from. So now that boundary does not exist. Now there is much more dependence on basically SaaS services, cloud services, things like that, which do not actually necessarily get actually configured with the VPNs or your workstations, right? So because you can have single sign-on across different applications, or some of those requirements actually get met without having traditional controls met, that's why the zero trust access became important. So zero trust access actually literally means that, okay, you don't trust anybody. So it's like the context actually matters, right? So if you do not have the context-based access rates, it does not actually make sense, right? Because you cannot necessarily track everybody's movements wherever they're actually going to be accessing the data or the systems, right? So in terms of basically the zero trust becoming popular, so it's not an optional thing. It's like it's a requirement. All of us basically do zero trust in some shape or form, right? So we have multi-factor authentication, we have micro-segmentation, we have something like browser isolation and things like that we do. So it's not necessarily a product, right? So it's basically a set of features, a set of frameworks that make up the zero trust. So when product security engineers or product developers actually they're trying to basically incorporate zero trust methodology in their product development lifecycle, so all they have to do is basically ensure that, okay, the access methodology is actually mapped in such a way that it does not put any implicit trust in any of the actors or any of the flows in your entire architecture. So what that means that you actually need to have anything that's going to be supplemented to your authentication system, such as basically passwordless authentication. You don't necessarily have that. So sometimes that's also not even enough, right? So you go for a pseudo-based authentication, like you want to make sure that, okay, critical accounts and things like that are protected way beyond that. So when it is actually like a combination of different tools, techniques that you want to deploy, make sure that, okay, your applications are isolated, they are actually segmented, so that they do not have impact if any of those gets compromised. So so that's what I think the important thing for product developers is that to ensure that, okay, the authentication and authorization methodologies that they adopt actually does not have any kind of explicit or implicit trust in any of the actors.
basic controls should be there, at least authentication, authorization. These should be
Without
properly
that,
implemented, right?
without that, anything basically the privilege management will not work, right? So you are not going to be able to basically allow anybody to work on an application if the authorization does not work, right? So you may have authenticated person, but if the authorization is not configured properly, it doesn't work, right? So it's extremely important to make sure that, okay, we balance that out. But at the same time, in context of zero trust, right? So it's literally like if we don't trust anyone.
I think there is a lot of things that Hilal has already added, but just a couple of things that I personally like in this space is when you're talking about not trusting anyone, and particularly in the context of supply chain. We have recently seen a lot of breaches that is happening because you have an inherent trust on whoever is building the code, and there are various ways through which attackers can actually get into your system. So one thing that I'm a fan of is having not just generating provenance. So whenever you are building your code, generate provenance, have attestations in place, but also signing provenance so that you are able to identify the players actually pushing code into your system, building it, and then this entire pipeline where you're packaging your artifacts and then pushing it or deploying it eventually. All of that is seamlessly covered. You can definitely, there are a lot of things available, like for example, Salsa is a very good framework to follow for many companies. Whichever level you can start with, level 1, 2, and then advance. But the idea is that there is an identification for who is building the code and in what is the kind of environment. For example, generally the provenance will give you the idea of what kind of environment it was building over the time, and what were the systems that were used and things like that. So that should be in place. And the second is, within your development environment, have privilege segregation. And you'll be surprised, many times we don't look at it, that many, even open source tools, and we were talking about open source, of course paid tools have this, but many open source tools have very discrete level of permissions which we don't use. I'll give you an example of Jenkins. Jenkins is such a commonly used one, but then it has a master agent kind of a setup where you can not just set from which repo you will be running code on a specific agent, but also which developer has access to that agent to run code. So that is the level that you get just in an open source tool, and think of, there are so many CI/CD tools available. So like that in many other cases, everything including your VCS or any component that you're using, the CD components and others, everything has that kind of segregation which should be used for making sure that there is also a blast radius which is not, so in case there is a compromise, it does not go beyond that.
Okay. So Prajal, you mentioned using of AI, right? So this question to all, because it's not in a maturity phase, so we would like to understand your thoughts and your insights as well. So what future trends do you all see in the intersection of AI into the product security, and how should companies prepare for these developments?
I feel first AI we are talking about because primarily GPT has opened up that bubble, but it's been there for a while. I feel more than a decade is where people have been trying to crack this game. A lot of product ideas I have come across with a lot of startups that they have been tweaking and tinkering with LLM security and AI to get the right leverage over, say, reducing false positives or making it more efficient, increasing the efficacy. Lot of possibilities around that. If you see any tech stack specifically for security, right? These are pretty much FMCG out of the box products that we use, be it in the SIEM world or product security lineup. We will have standards, and most of them will have a lot of noise which gets generated. So that is where I feel with product security and AI coming together, we can reduce that noise. A lot of code security can be also, there we have a lot of scope in secure SDLC where AI can also be leveraged along with LLMs. I think these are the areas I feel we can investigate further.
Ankur, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think, and suddenly if you see there are a lot of AI companies, everyone is trying to use AI, where you put them into SDLC, they'll identify the bug in the code, they will automatically fix it using AI, and you have the code which is ready to be pushed, right? So I think it has gone to another level, but I think there's still a scope for some maturity. But I think it brings a lot of security also around it. There's a lot of question around how do you secure AI itself, right? What if you make a model and what it brings out, you have to secure that too, right? So I think open to a lot of suggestions area.
Hilal, lead on thoughts as well.
For me, I think I primarily put the benefits of generative AI in 3 buckets. One is basically increasing efficiency, so you get a lot more done in a lot less time. Second, it does is basically like increases basically remediation.
The idea of exactly reducing the false positive, basically from seeing a piece of code is actually vulnerable or not just because, like, for example, if there is a vulnerable library, it's a transitive dependency and you don't know whether it actually will be called or not, and should you fix it or not. That drives a lot of negative immunity in developers, that hey, there are thousands of issues that this tool is finding and I don't want to fix it anymore. So those are some very key problems if it can solve, including things like trend analysis, where you can not just look at what are the recurring fault lines that developers are having. Like, we give security code trainings, right? You write your code securely and all that. But what are the recurring issues that we are facing where you can write the code better? If you could have that feedback across the organization and enterprise, like scale in a way. So if AI can solve that, then that'll be really good, because then we know exactly where we're making the mistakes. I totally agree with these points. Thank you to all our panelists, and we tried to cover most of the topics related to
OSS, AI, intersection of AI, usability, innovation, and OSS, and so that's all for the day.